All right, let's try this clap thing again. We're getting better. We're getting better.
I'm so bad at clapping, Arthur.
Yeah. I get it. So, three, two, one, clap. Okay. There's still like a second, but I mean, I think it's just delay on Discord.
We'll see.
Damn, that was terrible. All right. So, hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of Sword, Shields, etc. I'm your host, Arthur, and as always, I have my co-host with me, Justin.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about what happens after session 0, session 1, and a couple other things too, as what we'll get to, maybe, if we have time. Anyway, let's get to it. Session 1, Justin, would you like to give us a quick definition of what you think session 1 is?
You're playing the game. Congratulations. You guys have made it past character creation. Or who knows, maybe you just went right into it. I don't know how you guys play games. But session one is, in my mind, the first game you guys have around the table where the roles really matter. Everything you do at this point is canon. There's no backing out. Actually, I would like to change what I did there. No, this is the dice speak, and everything else is up to the gods of luck.
So, session 1 for me is really like I usually like to think about role playing games like a TV show. So it's the teams together. You guys have a common goal. Hopefully, it is kind of
If
that
you went to session zero, like we said,
yeah.
you
If you
should
do
have
a
one.
session, yeah, session 0 would. I guess session 0 would be like the quote unquote episode 1, I suppose.
I would put it as
Uh,
prologue. That's how I would see it.
Prologue. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good way to put it. But now you're finally the Fellowship of the Ring is setting off, or whatever you call yourself.
You're here to save the princess. You all have one goal in mind, or a general
Yeah.
sense of what the
But of
goal
course, I
is.
think by session 1, you should also have a shared goal in mind as well.
Yeah, no, of course. That's
Yeah.
what I mean.
As well as your individual character goals, which are still important to maintain in your role playing. Um, and you set off, and so what exactly do you think should happen session 1? How prepared should a GM be for that? What should a player do in order to facilitate session 1?
Yeah, so I kind of have my thoughts about this jump all the time, and I think it comes down to system most of the time. So we'll use D&D. Always, always, always. I will throw an encounter in there whether I want to or not. It's not a choice by me. It's I have to do this. One, because I want to see how everyone reacts to everything. So at the end of the session, I can ask, "Oh, do you guys think that the combat was fun? Oh, would you prefer if there was a bit less combat, more talking, or guys, do you just want to keep killing everything? Because otherwise I gotta start making up random stats for everything, stuff like that." So I think having the core functionality of the game has to be there. D&D, if you ask me, combat is the main thing about that game. The point of the game is to kill everything, so I'm going to say combat's important. But if you play a game like Masks, obviously you need like a villain to show up. You play Powered by the Apocalypse, you can have like a gang show up, but the possibilities are a lot more open for Powered by the Apocalypse and Masks to a degree, because both sides of the coins in Mask, where you're in high school or not in high school, depending, or if you're out and you're being heroes, you got to juggle those two because both of those are the core aspect of the game. Whereas a game like Mouse Guard, you got to go out on a patrol. When you think of the game that you're playing and you're saying, "Oh, this is the thing that always happens when you play this game." In Dungeons and Dragons, you always go into a dungeon. You always start an end. You always fight something. You have to do that. And the main reason why is you want to see how your players react to what you're trying to give them. If you realize they're not really buying the whole dungeon diving thing, this is a good time to find out. You don't want to be doing this like 3 sessions later, and then they're like, "Actually, we're not whole into the whole dungeon diving thing," and then you're just sitting there and you're like, "But I already came up with 5 other dungeons and I didn't know what you guys wanted." So I think that's really important, and it's just the general. You got to play to your game's strength. That's really important for session one.
Yeah, a lot of games too have guidelines about how a regular session should go.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful. That books try to give an example and everything. I know Shadowrun, a lot of it is just lore, but at the same time, it's very important. Like, oh, this is how talking to the Mr. Oh my God, I can't remember now. Basically, you're the guy who gives you jobs. You gotta talk to your handler. And how would that go? Maybe you're the face. Maybe you can do something a bit more because you're charismatic. You're the face of the team. But I think another thing for this kind, at least for session one, I like to keep it small. I don't like to make an entire world and say, yeah, everything's free, and then hope that my players don't get lost in there. Because most of the time they will. They'll be saying, I want to go that way, and like, yeah, no, that's where the Empire is, and you're not allowed in there because you don't have a permit and all that. Well, they want to point in that direction, and yeah, it's nice to set up like boundaries, saying, "Oh no, you really shouldn't be going in there because maybe because of your backstories or something. It's just not a smart idea, or maybe the big bad evil guy is actually from there, and I don't want you walking in there just yet. Maybe a bit later." But I do think starting small is important, especially for newer GMs. You don't want to be thinking too far ahead, where everything is set in stone. And I think you need to be flexible, very flexible, as a first-time GM or even just any GM. If you can adapt to what your players are doing in the first session, you be prepared to dig yourself an early grave later on, because when they ask you, "Oh, so I want to do that. We wanted to do that, and that we thought that would be fun, but we couldn't because whatever you put in their way." And in my mind, the first session should be gauging interest. You want to see how interested the players are. Like I said before, throw the main thing of the game, masks, bring them to high school and fight, like do superhero stuff. D&D, go kill everything in the town, or just go into a dungeon. Those are the main things of those games, and you need to do those, but at the same time, don't go overboard and saying, now you're entering a dungeon that has 100 different floors. I expect you guys to get the 10th floor by the end of this session. That's not fun for a lot of people, because what if they don't want to go in the dungeon? You've kind of screwed yourself if that's the case. Maybe they don't want to do it. Don't overinvest yourself in this first session. Be open to, yeah, we're going that way now. I had an entire campaign once where I thought they would explore, do their jobs. No, they just decided to look for frickin' chocolate cows and strawberry cows. But it's like, nah, I want to find these cows and drink those milk. And it was an interesting idea, but the original idea was they're going to go fight something because that's what they were going to do. And I just threw it somewhere else because nothing was set in stone.
Yeah, I know the popular first session, at least for Dungeons and Dragons, is usually everyone's at an inn. The mayor or whatever runs in, and or the governor of the town. It's like there's someone in the cave raising skeletons from the dead. Is like I think like 6 or 7 of the games I've played started with that, and I think well one, skeletons are relatively low level
Yeah.
enemies, and two, you can kind of gauge how the players react.
Well, I think another thing is because that's a very, in my opinion, bland answer to like what should we throw at them first. The reason being is that,
I don't think it's a bad choice.
well, I don't think it's bad, but I do think it's bland, at least from a GM. If you're an experienced GM, I generally want something a bit more unique. Like, let's
Okay, yeah, yeah.
say, so the reason I say that is because, yeah, necromancers are historically bad, but let's say in the example where in that world that you were talking about before, there was a guy who didn't let you like you couldn't play the necromancer you wanted because you thought it'd be, oh, this would be morally like unacceptable. Nah, it was morally acceptable in that world. For the same reason, necromancy is almost always seen as, oh, that's just not right. That's bad. Because that's how we're conditioned in society today. That's just how we see. Raising the dead is not a good thing. All the movies, all the books, everything tells me that's a bad idea. So obviously you got to go stop them. But I do think that there are definitely more interesting ways to do it. Whether it be, oh, they're in a certain area of the cave that cannot be accessed unless you solve this puzzle, or maybe, oh yeah, every time you kill a skeleton, like 2 more pop up or something. Like you want it to be unique to a degree to really get your players in, because how many times have they heard the story, especially experienced players? There's a cave, there's a necromancer, oh my god, there are skeletons. You want to be throwing something at them. That way they can be prepared. Especially if this is the first session, you should be kind of prepared for that to a degree where you can be unique.
Yeah, it helps you get a feel for as a player. It helps you get a feel for the GM style too. Because if there's let's say oh, you're GMing a game and you decide to start with Necromancer in the cave with the skeletons, but you start throwing crazy puzzles. at the players, like, oh, there's this stone that you have, and there's like, different slots in the wall underneath statues of gods and goddesses, and the stone belongs to one, and you have to figure it out through a
Yeah,
riddle or something. That really gives a feel of how the rest of the game is going to be. If you're going for that cryptic, like, really traditional, like,
exactly. And I
dungeon
think I
crawling.
think traditional dungeon crawling, dungeon diving, I think that's very important. You want to show that you have good puzzles and it'll be interesting. I think another part would come along to the fact that when you are, and I think this goes more along for D&D than anything else, but when you're making like a puzzle or something, obviously don't make it too difficult just because you play D&D, let's be honest, you want to kill things. You're not there for the mysteries and the puzzles. It's nice. Not every player feels that way, I'm sure, but there have been some times where we've been stuck behind a stupid riddle for an hour, and me as a player, I'm just like, I can't answer this because my character's too stupid. I know the answer, and we can't do anything for this first session because no one can figure out this stupid answer.
I think it depends on your group too. If you have,
Yeah,
well, not on your group, but let's say you do throw a difficult puzzle in, and you have a character who, I'm not, I'm not a genius, but I can think. But let's say my character has a really high intelligence score or wisdom score. As a GM, I feel like play to the character's strengths, not the player's strengths.
yeah, yeah,
So if there's a really hard puzzle, I don't have a problem with it as long as the GM lets me roll an intelligence check to see if I can figure it out. And then the GM will give me a hint, or the GM will flat out tell me what the answer is. Because, of course, if my character's a genius and I'm not, my character will get it and I won't. But it's the same problem you were having where
yeah.
you figured out the puzzle, but your character necessarily wouldn't have.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. The only problem I could have with possibly rolling it, and as a GM, is when that player rolls a really low number. In the example of D&D, someone rolls a 1, and for a skill check, that shouldn't be a fumble. But in this scenario, let's say you only have a +2 because you're level 1. So, okay, so you have a 3. That's not very high on a skill check generally, no matter what it is. And you'll be like, well, as the GM, I have to obey the rule. So, you blanked out. You just can't think of it. Which is why I like the ideas of just, oh, I'll take 10. It'll take me like 10 minutes. I'll take 20. It'll take me hours to figure it out, but we'll get it. But
No, I think that's a decent middle ground too. The just taking 10 if you study it for what, like an hour or two, like an hour and a half.
yeah, take some time. Like, obviously, it goes for the real world. It's a smart idea, and it also prevents those problems where you're like, well, because I rolled a 2, I'll never be able to solve this. That doesn't make sense. It just means in the moment you can't do it.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
sit there for a bit longer, you probably can figure it
Yeah,
out.
and for people who don't know, taking 10 means, time passes in the game, but your character automatically rolls
Gets a
a
10 on a
10
skill
plus
check.
and then 10
Yeah,
plus their
yeah.
modifier.
And then, so taking 20 means you'll automatically succeed, but that'll take like
Yeah,
hours to
well, it
do.
depends on the size of the task too. But
Yeah,
usually GMs
yeah.
are pretty open about, yeah, your character's good at that. 30 minutes they'll be able to figure this out.
Yeah. So let me ask you this about session 1. Do you so we're talking about solving problems and all those things. Do you prefer it when you are generally the one figuring it out, or do you like it when a GM is willing to like throw little hints or like, hey, there's like a monster there that you can't beat unless you have the help of an NPC or something? I, as a GM, hate that. I don't play this game for me. I play this game to see what my players can do. I know how to solve my problem. I made my problem.
It depends. It depends for me on the situation. So if if there's a puzzle that the GM sets in front of us, you don't usually like to do big puzzles
I
anyway.
don't enjoy puzzles because I've seen how stupid some people can be. I'll do
But
it
no,
occasionally, but
I
I don't
enjoy
enjoy it
puzzles.
that
I enjoy
much.
puzzles because it gives me like the Legend of Zelda kind of thrill. But
Yeah.
for me, if let's say you have to give time for a puzzle. I think it's all about time. So if it takes 5 minutes for someone to get a step further in your puzzle, that's okay. But if it starts getting to the point where the players are noticeably like disheartened or really just can't figure it out, I think that's the time to start either dropping hints or be like, "Hey, some architect NPC just walked into the building." And he's like, or some not architect, some like
Just a smart
archaeologist.
person. Some
Yeah, an
smart person
archaeologist
figured
came and was
this
like,
out for us.
haha, I've seen this puzzle before, duh. And then, you have a new NPC who just showed up in the world, I guess. but I think also the add the choice to add puzzles in any session, regardless of the game, really comes down to knowing as a GM what your character, what your players' characters are built for. So if you have a party of, let's say you have 4 people playing and all of them are barbarians or all of them have low wisdom or intelligence rolls, they want to go in there and beat the crap out of everybody. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? They don't want
exactly.
to go in there and solve puzzles or roll balls into pits or something. They want to crack some skulls and
Yeah.
stab some peeps. So it really comes down to I think this should have all been solved in session 0, but I still think it's important to talk about, you know, just to kind of scope out what session 1 should look like.
Yeah, so I personally don't like telling too much about session one. Session zero is fine. I'm willing to share as much, but session one I like to be a bit more secretive to a degree where I'm like, okay, the starting point is set. You guys don't know anything else. Everything else is hidden from you guys. I'll give you other pieces in like session zero to be like, oh yeah, this character you know, that guy you used to work with, oh that guy he slept with your mother or something like that. I'll give you all the pieces so when session one comes around, you all know what to do.
Yeah,
But session one itself, I like to keep my players sort of in the dark for, oh, here's what's going to happen.
session 1 you want to push the
But yeah,
players.
exactly. I want to see how far you're willing to go. This is more of a test for you guys. I mean, it's a test for both of us. How good of a GM am I, and do I match your style, and how well do you guys match my style? And how far are you willing to go to solve these problems, or are you just going to have your characters turn around and say, you know what? I don't think skeletons are that bad. What's wrong with the dead walking around? I think they belong in society, just like everyone else.
Yeah.
And
Or
that'd be an interesting scenario,
mhm.
but
So
something like that.
what about this situation? Let's say, session 0 is over, you've all agreed that the plot of this story is or the GM has created the plot of the story and
Yeah,
told it in session 0. The king's son is kidnapped. He's like 7 years old, and he's being held for some kind of ritual to bring back some evil dragon. Right?
yeah,
Simple kind of generic plot.
yeah. Not too
Um,
hard. Save the princess kind of deal.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Do you as a GM are you going to start off session 1 saying to the players, "There you go. There's the story. Go solve it," or are you gonna throw them a bone in the form of like an NPC or some kind of hint about where they should be going, or do you want them to look for it?
So for me, most of the time in session zero, I would have told them, yeah, it's like a 2 day journey. The king has said you can have anything you want. By the time session one comes around, I hope you guys have thought a bit about what you want, or you can ask the king for. So that way, I'm having them think outside of the game, and I think that's really smart as well. Because I want my players, when they come in, I want them to be ready and say, "Could you recap real quick what just happened?" I'm like, "We played yesterday." I don't enjoy it when I have to retell everything because I'm worried I might spoil too much. Especially since I like kind of hiding what's going to happen in the session for my players. But I think that throwing them a bone isn't a bad thing. Saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, there's a NPC that wants to come with you." But whenever I throw things like that, I think I'm pretty liberal throwing bones. But part of the like what I kind of do with it is that sometimes I get it to mess with my players. So an example I have is that in the very first session of actually I think it was my very first campaign as a GM. I had all my players. They were all like looking for money, so they all decided to work for this wizard. And this wizard's, yeah, I need you to go into a cave and get this artifact. But none of you will be able to deal with the artifact itself because it's too immense in power. So I'll send my assistant. I'm too busy doing research here, so my assistant will go with you. The assistant helped them, bonded with each character, talked to them, and like, oh yeah, it's very interesting, and like basically tried to blend in with the party. And then at the very end of it, I said she picks up the orb and then she smashes it and disappears. And then suddenly everything's like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, she tricked you guys. So I'm not afraid to throw them a bone for like the entire thing, but I'm also not afraid to take that bone and say, this isn't a bone. This is a bomb, or this is just a toy, something like that. This is not. You guys might have thought that I was helping you out, but in the reality, you are helping me out, kind of deal.
And right there too, you establish a
I establish a goal for future
yeah,
sessions.
and
That's
a common enemy. Was
yeah.
did she end up being the kind of the big bad?
She worked for the big bad, but
Okay.
it was sort of like a plot, like kind of hooking them in. That was the hook, and then slowly they beat her, and then she's like, "I'm not important." Yeah.
What do you think about
Introducing Big Bad or
no,
introducing?
not introducing Big Bad, but Big Bads in general?
Ooh, okay. I'm bad. I'm bad at thinking of a bad guys. Because when you make a bad guy, you want to be sure that they're smart, but not too smart. That's the problem.
Okay, yeah, but do you need a Big Bad?
Um, I generally, so the way I see it is, you want to do it sort of like in arcs. You want there to be like the main big bad for this arc. So you don't want it to always be, yo, there's always this big bad guy looming over you for the entire time. No, make it like a TV show sort of deal where like this is the bad guy for this season. But as soon as they beat that guy, there might be someone else coming or he might come back. You never know. Depends on what you
I don't
guys
know if
do.
that applies to TV shows though. I because I get the impression a lot of even Saturday morning cartoons, which is like I know your style of GMing
Yeah.
and Saturday morning cartoons are super similar, but like even there it's like, Megatron's the bad guy, but he throws
Well, I think
star
for me
streak.
it'd be the example of like Slade and Terra from Teen Titans to a
Okay.
degree, where Terra was a good guy for the longest time, and then she became a bad guy. But Slade was always a bad guy, but at some point later on, he was kind of a good guy, and then he became a bad guy again because I don't even really remember. But it's sort of the idea that when they. So obviously, this is all the assumption that your players aren't going to kill everyone, but
Yeah, yeah.
knowing most players are probably going to kill everyone. That
Well, I think
some people can show restraint. I'm just going to assume most people can't. I think that's the safest way to do it generally. No one survives. But the way I see it is that you don't want it to always be just one person because once that one person is dead, and whether it could be like easy or hard or like wacky on how it happened, where do you go after that? I want it to be sure that I can always say, okay, if they don't want it to end, or if I can somehow hook them and keep going, and we all agree that we want to keep playing, we don't want to go to a new game or anything, then I'm going to tag them along. In the game with you, every Saturday, we eventually found an ending, and it was one we all agreed, yes, we should stop. Part of that was because college was ending for us, so this is the only way we could do it.
yeah, we weren't gonna play after
Yeah,
for
but
sure.
I
So
think the way I did it was I raised the stakes continually. It was first, oh yeah, so yeah, you guys are just fighting. Like it started off like a morning cartoon show. Yeah, you guys are just doing stuff. Slowly it became, hey, there's some bad guys over there that you should really be beating up. You guys beat up the bad guys. What's the next step? Yo, the gods have noticed you guys did some good work. I like you guys. I won't pick you guys as champions. Okay. Then we have a tournament arc because, anime influenced me quite a bit. So
tournament
there's
arc,
a
yeah.
tournament arc, which actually lasts only one episode, oddly enough, for the most part.
Oopsies.
Yeah,
That's a
oopsies.
great story.
Yeah, no, we'll tell that in the future.
Yeah,
But
yeah, definitely,
short
definitely.
story happens that suddenly everything is thrown out the window, and now the old gods have resurrected and are now trying to destroy the world. What do you guys do? You destroy it. Where do I go from there? Well, old gods are pretty old, but what if I bring in, and I love that they have this in Pathfinder, solar dragons and freaking like lunar dragons, like outer space. I start bringing in those things, and I just make it even bigger. And then at some point it'll be too big, and I'm like, we gotta cut it. We can't keep going. There's nothing left. You destroy the Earth at this point.
So yeah, I know your style definitely is the building arcs. So you have
Yeah,
an arc where there's a bad guy who wants to maybe
yeah, and
burn down the
again,
town
yeah,
that you
you're
live
right.
in.
This is how I like to do it, and the reason why is because it gives power progression. That's essentially it. You feel a sense of progression because I don't want you guys to think you just killed the big bad at level 4. That doesn't make sense.
It no, it depends not it depends on two things. I think it depends on how long you predict the game lasting, and also it depends on the game itself. So let me kind of explain this. If you think your game, let's say you have a game with kids or with friends of yours in college, and you're sophomores, and you can see that you can kind of predict that you guys are going to be playing until you're seniors. That's 2 or 3 years of gameplay right there. That the arcing, yeah, once a week or something. The arcing plot structure that you set up works for that because you have that progression. You
Yeah.
have a character that unless they die, is going to grow and grow and grow and grow as those arcs begin and end and go on. So you can have the you fought the level 4 villain that was trying to desecrate the
Yeah,
church.
now you'll fight the level 8 next. And I understand where you're going with this, where I am. It won't work in all occasions. I totally understand that.
Well, yeah. Well, again, if let's say you have when we set up for our our gaming club in college, we set up every semester you everyone who had the same kind of times and wanted to play a game together would get together and play a game, and we knew that that wasn't going to last years because it was a semester long. In that case, I think uh, having a more established singular arc is a lot more powerful of a storytelling technique. And so it's the difference between like a mini series and a full on television show where it's like a mini series is like 5 episodes, self contained plot, and maybe it'll get a sequel, probably won't.
Yeah.
Um, and I think for that it's a lot easier, especially in a session 1 for that to establish a big bad, to have the players go out and not fight the big bad in session 1, of course, but fight something involved with the big bad. Not tell them exactly who the big bad is or what their plans are, but have hints thrown throughout. So maybe
Yeah.
you have that necromancer plot, and maybe the necromancer needed you to kill all those skeletons because it's part of some ritual that the big bad needs to have completed. Who knows, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That self-contained, if you know you're not going to be playing for more than a couple months, or even 1 or 2 sessions, it's so much better to be able to say that's the end of the story.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's like how Star Wars Episode 4 is a full story,
Yeah.
and like maybe you'll get sequels.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you in that regard. I think I should probably rephrase a little bit. So again, all of the examples I pulled was just how I prefer to do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with a big bad showing up and being the only big bad, but I do hope that you have enough filler in there before the big bad to make it interesting.
Well,
That's
if again, it all depends on the timing for
Yeah,
that.
again, it depends on the game. So like if you're running for a couple months, yeah, I can understand there's one big bad guy, just little minions go. But in the grander campaigns, I personally prefer it when you don't flush out just one big guy at the top. You flush out all of his little cronies and all the people leading up to him. Because you don't enjoy beating up some random guy that you didn't know, and it's all because he had the key to get into the place, or, oh, they were trying to do that, so we had to stop them. That's no fun. You want to build, like, some sort of, like, hate relationship, or maybe make your players respect that character, for all I know. I know an example I can pull, and I used it on you, was there was an assassin who was going for the exact same thing as you guys, but he was the nicest guy you guys ever met in the campaign. He was like, "Oh, how are you feeling?" and like everything, and then he's like, "I need to do this. If I don't do this, I die." And you guys are like, "We have to fight then. We have to fight." And you guys let him go, but because he didn't complete his mission, he died. Stuff like that. And he wasn't anyone important. I didn't really plan on pulling him out like that soon, but I liked the idea of, oh, you guys need a guide. Let me get someone who's doing the exact same thing as you. But he's so nice. He's a demon that's so nice and such a gentleman that he won't like backstab you.
Or it was we had to capture somebody, but he wanted to kill them. He was paid to assassinate them, and we had to save the person he was trying to kill.
Yeah, and again, it's because I built up you guys having a relationship with that person, and he wasn't important. He wasn't even a tough fight. Let's be honest. He was
Oh
like a
no,
very
no.
easy fight for you guys, but because I made you guys have that attachment to him, it was so much more important. And I think that's so important for when you're playing the game that you don't just make the end goal the one of all the personality and all that junk. You want to put it you want to spread it out. You want to give everyone some personality. And that's a good trait of a good GM where if I can talk up to a random NPC or say, "Yeah, I want to talk to that guy or something." If the GM is like, "Yeah, do you want to role play it or do you just want to buy your items from the shopkeep?" That you can make the shopkeep memorable or something along those lines. And yeah, it's not good idea to make everybody memorable, but when it's like, no, 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 I have a great bit for this, like I have a story and everything for this, let's just go with it. When you can throw those in willy nilly or like whenever, especially with enemies, because I think those are the best stories to tell. I think that's what makes a good campaign where you can like, oh, you remember that time when we met that guy who gave us that, or do you remember when I met Bobo the Minotaur who said his name is not Bobo or something like that? And you can just keep pulling those things rather than, do you guys remember when I killed that dragon and he ate my father and mother? Yeah. And that's like the only thing you can pull. That just doesn't seem as memorable of a campaign to me. I'd rather have my players talking about, oh, remember that random session where we weren't really doing anything, but something awesome still
Yeah.
happened.
So to bring it back then,
Yeah,
um,
kind of jumped really far ahead. I'm sorry.
no, it's fine. Talking about plot structure is important when talking about starting to play the game. But let's say either I decide to go with with a big bad for a short campaign, or I try decide to do something. Is session one the place to introduce that, or is session one to introduce tastes?
I think tastes. I personally think tastes. You should never try to introduce your big bad. Like,
Yeah, that's why cronies is always a good way to go with it.
yeah, I personally think so. Yeah, you can introduce it, and I think the most important thing is don't reveal all your cards, especially as the GM, because once you reveal all your cards, you're in trouble. Because then your players will be like, oh, yeah, no, we can just ask about that and figure it out, and then we have a countermeasure. Or, oh, I figured out about that guy, so now I can just do some quick research, and boom, we can when we fight the big bad, I know how to deal with it. You never want like, so an example for this would be like, oh, that guy is like a lich. We found out the big bad guy is a lich. Great. So we're just gonna do some research, find out where he keeps his can't remember, but it's an item basically that tethers his soul. And once you destroy that, he dies. Because if you just kill a lich normally in D&D, it will just go back to where its soul is held and just reanimate essentially. So the concept there is that we know it's a lich, so let's just find the little thingy that will bring it back, and then we can just kill. Then we don't even have to fight him. We just kill him right there. And yeah, we might have to fight some things, but we don't have to fight the freaking big bad guy. And then problem solved. We don't have to do anything. But if you can say, yeah, it was a hooded, like so, you see a hooded figure floating above the ground, about a few paces above, and he lifts his hand, and the undead all drop to the ground, and suddenly you see blood appear like crawling down the walls, and suddenly you see a giant flesh golem appear in front of you. You have no idea what that guy did. You have no idea like where these things are coming from. All you know is that that dude made a flesh golem appear in front of you.
But still, that still is the big bad making an appearance.
That's still the big yeah, it's still the big bad guy. But you're not saying yeah, it's a lich, it's all
Well, yeah,
those things. Yeah, you can
you're
see
not
his
giving it
face.
away.
You don't give all your cards at the beginning because that's how your players, and this is where I usually find the problems is that my players are suddenly become smarter than I give them credit for, and then they're like, "Nah, we figured out all the problems, we've dealt with it, we've planned ahead," and I'm just like, "Great, I showed my hand too fast, and now we're in trouble."
That, or I know one way a GM of mine handled the situation, at least in session one, was to have, we beat up this guy who we thought was just doing a petty crime, and we were sent to stop him because we were good citizens or whatever, and we ended up killing him because that's just how most Pathfinder games go. And
Can we subdue
because,
him?
well,
Yeah, we
none of
could,
us
but why would
no,
we?
none of us had non-lethal weapons. You know how it is, but
Just take off your drop the weapons and punch. Damn
Yeah,
it, the
sure.
monks can do it. Why can't
but
you?
but on him he had an amulet, and that
Yeah.
amulet, when the GM pointed it out very specifically, was like he has this amulet around his neck, and then that was our connection to, oh, there's some society with this symbol that might be doing
Exactly.
something weird.
So, again, session one, you shouldn't be throwing your hand out. You should be trying to hook them in
Exactly.
one way or another.
So that session one was interesting because we got our hands on this amulet and we were like, well, this doesn't look like a holy symbol, but maybe it might be an old one, and we brought it to the temple in session two.
Yeah, exactly. And see that stuff like that is good GMing. It leaves you wondering what's going to happen next. Whereas if I throw and tell you, yeah, that dragon over there that ate the king that was going to pay you the reward, and you still got to kill it because you said on your honor or whatever because you're a paladin. Yeah, you guys got to go kill it still. And then it's like, well, it's a dragon. Do we know any dragon slayers? Calling out all dragon slayers, and then the GM's like, no, yeah, no, there's no dragon slayers. They all died. Yeah, the dragons all slayed them. They were really bad dragon slayers. That's not fun. That feels a bit like ham-fisted in there and saying, yeah, no, you guys got to be the ones to do it. Don't rely on anyone else. Because once you, again, it's a game of information essentially. You don't want them knowing too much, but you want them knowing enough that they want to keep playing. Because if everything was known to them, where's the fun?
Yeah, so in general, you think it should be a session that at least has the beginnings of plot.
I think you have to at least throw the hints in there, or at the very least, like sometimes what I do is that I can keep it there. Like I can even just do session one is kind of isolated, but session two, you go back and think, oh, what did I do in session one that I can sprinkle stuff from session two that will say, yeah, actually what they were doing was really important or stuff like that. Because no, I know myself as a GM, I improv a lot. And then I always run into the problem the next session. I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to pull all this stuff together and give them a plot? It's just, you have to be ready to, like, again, part of it is I don't like showing my hand, so easy fix is I don't have a hand. It's as simple as that. I just make it up as I go. This is not a problem if there's nothing to hide.
But if you're going for a more contained story, like
Yeah, more contained story than,
yeah, let's say the
yeah.
GM has a plan, they know who the big bad is, they know what the big bad's doing. Session 1 should be kind of a plot-filled, not scripted event, but the GM should guide the players.
I don't think scripted. You should be able to, yeah, you should be able to get a hook in there to make them say, "Oh, I really want next session to like happen because I really want to know what happened," or "Man, that person really screwed us over on our biggest job," or "Oh man, we had everything and then they just took it away from us. I'm going to hunt them down and kill them." Something like that. And I think that goes back into the goals idea for we were talking about last episode in session 0 and character creation. I think the idea of goals is very useful for this because what you want is your players coming up with new goals by the end of session 1. I think that's the most important
Yeah,
thing.
whether it's goals that pertain to the plot or goals that
Plot or their personal goals, like I saw that guy have a really cool weapon, I want it. So next time I'm going to ask him, how do I get that weapon? I'm either going to steal it or I'm going to get a weapon similar to it. Yeah, that's great. You have a goal. You're doing something then. And I think that's a very good, like I think the idea of having goals as a character is something that D&D misses dearly. I don't know how they would work it into their system, but I really think it's a smart, at least for RP, I really love that idea
yeah,
so
I think
much.
with at least goals in D&D, that's more something that the players have to kind of mitigate in their own mind.
They have to visualize it themselves, which is sort of the problem. There's no mechanic to encourage them to
And there's
do
no
it.
mechanic to encourage you to complete the goal
Yeah.
either. But
Yeah.
I mean, if you like role playing and you like playing, and
Yeah,
you're
you'll get
gonna
it.
you're
But
gonna have you're gonna want your character to have some
But for
emotions.
players who are like, no, I want the best character, and like people who are playing the game strictly for, I want to be the highest level possible, I want to be the best character possible, you're going to skip the RP. You're going to go right into fights and say, no, we kill everything, because that's how I get my
Yeah.
XP.
Well, again, I think that's stuff that the group needs to talk about in session 0.
Yeah, the group has to agree on. I do like how some GMs do it, where they control the pacing. We're like, oh yeah, I feel like right about now, you guys level up. Part of, like, it doesn't work hand in hand with the goal system, because the part of the goal is you're furthering your cause, but if your GM is controlling your leveling, like as a group, then doing the goals are pointless. And again, there's a very fine balance in terms of leveling. How D&D has it right now is good for what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah,
And if you're trying to
which is
play,
combat and dungeon
just
diving.
kill everything. Yeah, kill everything. Nothing. The quest won't give you anything. Like finding items won't give you anything. Getting money won't give you anything. You just need to kill more things. And that's not necessarily bad, but you do want to know what your players want. If your players want a very story focused or very character development focused game, goals is not a bad way to go.
Or progression where the GM's like, okay, I think you guys deserve a level.
Yeah, or the progression where, yeah, follow the plot and say, yeah, I think all of you guys, you get a level up or something like that. And I think it works really well for those games you talked about where it's like only a few sessions
Oh, that's
because
true. Yeah.
how am I going to somehow get you guys from 1 to like 5 or 1 to 10?
You guys fought 500 skeletons, so I guess you gain a
Yeah, as
level out of
opposed to
that.
you guys
It's
did the
better.
session today.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Here, gain a level, gain 2 levels.
Yeah, those self-contained campaigns, well, it makes it easier for the players and it also makes it easier for the GM.
The only problem I have with it is that it's too fast, generally. That's my only problem.
Yeah, but
Because,
again, if you don't get to like, fall into your characters kind
well,
of.
I think for me it would be, as a GM, I would rather weaken everything. I would rather, like, weaken the enemies
I
to a degree
disagree.
and keep you guys lower level. That's what I would do.
I almost 100% disagree. which is interesting because we don't usually do that.
Yeah, I don't think this is a good topic to talk now because we're only talking
Okay,
about
yeah,
session
yeah.
one, but we are kind of leading into it, so I just wanted to bring that up. Maybe we'll talk about it again in the future, but it's just an idea that I have in my head.
Anyway, back to session one, I guess.
Yeah,
So more plot
yeah, session
focused,
one.
maybe have some kind of taste or connection to the big bad, if you have a big bad. Yeah.
The important thing is always, if you don't necessarily need a big bad in the first session, but you want to be able to point later on and say this is somehow all connected.
Well, I guess you could say a big bad or an arc bad, if that makes sense. Like the bad for the arc.
Yeah, either way it goes. Either way it goes.
But again, so session one comes off the coattails of session zero, where you guys agreed what the game was going to be like, and now you're actually playing it. Some games don't allow for a session zero,
Yeah,
or some players or some GMs might not believe in that in session zero as like a thing, and they might just skip it. What changes about session one then, if you skip that?
okay, so you're gonna have that traditional story. You're gonna have that you all started in an inn, and then suddenly the mayor runs into the room and says, "Oh my God, there are undead walking around everywhere!" Like that's just what's gonna happen. You're gonna have to build up the plot. You have to build up a story. You're gonna say, "Okay, you guys are all working together now," and again, I've said it before. I hate having to do that. It feels so. I feel like it's so much more effort on me than the players because I'm like, "Oh no, you guys have to work together." I'm like, why?
Yeah, you have to find something that all the players' characters would agree to work on together.
Exactly. And again, maybe your players are really good at working together, but most of the time I find that there's one that's trying to be a lone wolf and he's like, "Nah, I'm gonna do things my way. Get out of my way."
Well, that's why I think that's where I think the merit of the necromancer in the cave story comes in.
Yeah, no, and I think it does help, but at the same time, what's to stop a player from saying, "I'm just gonna leave. Fuck it. I can kill like 5 of them on my own, and that's enough to get out of here. I don't need to go in there and kill 6 of them instead."
Yeah, I don't know what to say. It's
See, the problem that the possibility is there. That's what I dislike about the necromancer
Yeah.
story.
No, and the possibilities there no matter what, even if you do a session zero and
Well,
agree
no,
on
but see,
everything,
the
the
thing is
possibility is
that
there that a player.
even if a player's like, "I'm gonna run away," then I can say, "Oh, is the whole party going with you?" Because generally at that point, the party is like functioning as a party. They're going to talk about it. They're saying, "No, I'm running for it." Someone's like, "Yeah, we should just run for it," and then everyone just leaves, because at that point they know that together we're stronger than individually, especially for something like this. So if they all run away, then I can be like, "Okay, yeah, some different thing occurs now." But if in when they're not even pushed together and like they're not like a unit yet, and one of them just runs away, now I need to somehow drag him back without killing him to the others, and I have to not let the others die, and I have to be like, you just all ended up in the cave somehow, like,
This is a controversial opinion for me
okay,
personally, but I think it's kind of the player's job to play their roles, but also to cooperate to an extent. And not exactly, that doesn't exactly mean like my character wouldn't fight this necromancer guy in a cave, but I'm gonna do it because it's better for the game.
yeah,
But I think the party needs to be able to reach an opinion, reach a conclusion where all the characters
agree on something.
in their own right are going to do something together.
Yeah,
And and
I
and
don't disagree
and
with
that might
you.
be
Yeah.
runaway. That might be ignore the problem. That might be begrudgingly accept, or that might be having stipulations. So let's say you have a cleric in the party who's like, I will not kill things, and
Non-lethal, here we come.
and well, that's great for your cleric because they're going to be healing everybody for the most part. But like, let's say they're like, I will not kill
This
things.
says the
Okay, that's
barbarian. Oh
fine.
man.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's a different story. But um, you need to reach a compromise there, and I think it's the player's job in session one to want to reach that compromise.
Yeah, no, I think in that situation it's very player focused, but I think the problem is that, and I've experienced this game many times. It's stemming, and I believe it stems from modern RPGs, and I'm not talking about tabletops. I'm talking about video games, where you, as a player of a video game, let's say Skyrim for example, you could just say, I don't want to do any of the main quest. Drag and shout. I don't want none of that. I'm gonna go over there and be a thief or something, and Yeah, you could do that. In a tabletop RPG when you got other people at the table, that's not very good. I'm going to go over to that city and be the best mage ever. Okay, yes, I understand that that's what you want to do, but right now we kind of have a problem in this town. It's like, okay, well, I'm just going to leave. Everyone else is, okay, I guess we all leave then. I mean, I have no reason to stay here. And like, yeah, if that's the situation, it works great. But generally, there's one player who's like, I don't need to talk to y'all. I can get out of here. I'm strong enough on my own. And then that's where the problem comes in, where I'm like, okay, now I have two different groups, and I gotta drag you guys all back together.
Well, that's why I'm saying it's controversial in my head because I want players to be able to do whatever they want with their character,
Yeah,
but and
please
I
work
want the
together.
freedom to do whatever I want I want the freedom to do whatever I want with my character as well, but there's only so much a GM could do to bring everybody together.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you. I think there's a responsibility when you're playing a group game that you play as a group. Don't make it about you. That's I agree with you there.
Maybe the GM has some situations where, like, let's say a guy's like, oh, I could do this on my own, and starts to leave, and then the GM could throw like
A
a
skeleton
level
opens the like a
5.
skeleton opens the door for you or something, or
Or
who
like the
knows.
GM can throw like a level 5 dude comes in, beats the living hell out of the guy who wanted to leave, and the rest of the party helps him get out of that situation.
Yeah, but see, if that's the case, then it's like that's fine. I don't have a problem there. But the rest of the party, in terms of characters, I don't think they would see any reason to help him out because
Well,
he
that's true.
abandoned
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Why would they help?
Which is why I think players just need to sit it out and handle it. Yeah.
You guys have all agreed what you're going to be doing, whether that's setting up past bonds or whatnot, or just saying, yeah, no, we all got screwed by this thing. And it's a dangerous trap, and I don't think a lot of GMs realize that, especially the first ones. When you create a world, you're saying to your players, yeah, you can do whatever you want. And some of them don't take that the same way as everyone else, where they're like, oh, I can do whatever I want. Okay, I'm going to go rob that guy. I'm going to go kill that guy. And it's just like, why are you doing that? You've lived in this world peacefully for 18 years, and suddenly you're just killing people. It's like, well, I can do whatever I want. So it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna take another player's character hostage.
Exactly. And again, that's not necessarily bad as long as everyone on the table is on the same page saying, yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah,
My
yeah.
character would have done that and everyone understands. Like, cool. But understand, your character's not going to be alive next session. And everyone's like, yeah, yeah, we all agree. We all agree.
We now all see you as a traitor. We're gonna
Exactly.
kick
But
you out
then
of our
see that
club.
I think
Yeah.
that introduces a pretty important question. Death in the first session. I know I myself don't like doing it. I try to prevent it at all costs. But I know there are other GMs that love killing their players.
Well, I think as a player, the worst thing that can happen to me is having a character die early. And I think early means there's so much wasted potential, and I'm the kind of person who when I build a character, I get so invested in that character's personality and that character's backstory. Like, I think about it, like, when I'm on the bus to work, or when I'm just laying in bed before going to sleep. I'll be like, oh yeah, what if this character is in this situation? What would he or she do? What would he or she do? What's what him or her's past? And so I get really attached. I get attached to these characters, and then if they do end up dying, it's almost like the worst thing ever if they die early. I think death is one of those things. Session one should not be lethal.
So I agree with you there, but I have a bit more of a I wouldn't say controversial, but I have a bit more of an extreme opinion. I follow uh a D&D a GM that's very popular on the internet, Adam Coble, also known as Skinny Ghost. He GMs for Roll20 and for It Me JP, I think primarily, but so basically what and he has a show where he talks about, oh yeah, people ask me for tips as a GM and I respond to them, and it's a very interesting show, and if you haven't watched it as a GM, I highly recommend it because he answers some very interesting questions. But one of the things that he always brings back to, and especially when it comes to death, is there are so much more interesting things to do than just kill a character. You can chop their arm off. You could take something away from them. The death is boring. Death is instant. Once death has occurred, nothing happens to that character anymore. You can push it so much further. You can say, okay, so an example of this is like, okay, say he's running away from the town, and the reason he's running away is that character had like a lost one or something. So let's say there's a hooded figure that gets in his way and like knocks him down, like it's an unwinnable fight. But they pull off their hood before he dies, and he notices that it is his lost one, standing there with like destroyed skin and like the pests like roaming around their body, and you can see cold eyes staring, and then they like leave, and they don't deal the finishing blow. Well, now you have some questions as a player and as a character saying, "Wait, I thought they were dead. What happened?" Well, now, I mean, that's a bit kind, but you don't always need to kill. You can knock them out. I mean, yes, combat is technically always lethal, because unless said otherwise, but you can say, "Oh, you all knocked out, and now you're all like trapped in some dungeon or something." Like you can make that transition very easily, and it's not
I don't think though. I don't think session one is the place for any
session
of
one. You
that.
don't agree. You think you should take those
I
away.
don't think session one is the place for anything
I
like
think
that.
I think the
I
idea
think
of
session one is to gauge how the characters play with each other, and to start up plot. I would be upset if anything happened lethal, or anything that even knocked my character. If knocked out the character is okay as long as my character's up in time to see whatever happens after the fight.
you want your character to be there the entire game, essentially. You don't want to be out of it for a bit.
Yeah, but I think it's not. I don't think session one is the time for punishments or for any type of negative circumstance.
So I think part of it comes down to how extreme are you willing to go as a GM. If you all have agreed that yes, this is a campaign where we're going to be bloody. If you go into combat, you have a very high potential of dying. Stuff like that makes sense to me, and I think D&D is a bit nicer than other systems, like Stars Without Numbers to a degree, where yeah, there's resing is a thing. You can pay money and someone can be brought back to life. That is, if you have the money, you can do it. Stuff like that. But I think that a general concept of you can still take things away from people and not be afraid. And and I think one of the reasons why I say that is because imagine, so I've done it where I fudged rules, where I'm like, oh no, you didn't die. Yeah, I didn't hit you. I mean, yeah, you had like 2 health left, but congratulations, you survived. And then later on, they told me, yeah, that's such an easy fight. I was like, you were supposed to be dead, but it's okay. I'm not gonna tell you because that don't want to hurt your feelings or anything. And you had fun. That's the important thing. But I do think that building something off of it, I think session one is still fine to be building stuff off of it, where like a plot point or like a personal goal for a character is like I want to save that person, but like you see a vision of them like standing there, and they like look at you and walk away or something like that. Like you could throw so many things and try to unite them to the party's cause to a degree.
I just think as a player it ruins player morale pretty quickly if session one is the place that they drop. And I would even argue session two to an extent.
You know me, I'm not a fan of killing characters most of the time. I try to draw out your lives. Heck, I've brought your character back multiple times just to kill him again. So,
That was the consequence of my first death. It's fine.
but see that's fine because I was able, like, you no longer saw death as the thing taking it away. You saw living as the thing that was awful after a while. And see that's what I was taking away from you. I was taking away the idea of like living. I took away your, like, there were a lot ways worse.
Death was preferable.
Exactly. For your character, you're like, oh, this again? Can't I just stay here a bit longer? And they're like, nope, sorry, going back to being alive.
But I'm saying that that stuff is great later on in the game.
Yeah, I can definitely see, like, I'm talking about this used as a tool mostly for later on, but I think for early on, I do kind of agree with you. Where I definitely agree with you in the terms of death. Death should not be on the table for that, unless the party agrees. Because as we both know, we're about to kill one of our fellow player characters in the very third session of a game, all because he took one of our players hostage. So that's agreed upon. So it's okay for death to occur.
He tried to kill one of us, so
We're just gonna kill him. We're just gonna throw him out into the
we're gonna
vacuums of space.
empty him out into space on our way.
Exactly.
On our
So
way to our
that's like
next
that's fine because you all agreed on it. But I think that
yeah. Even he did, which is
yeah,
great.
again, he was a good sport. He understood that what was going to happen, so it's fine. But I do think that when you are playing, so part of it is that you, as a GM, especially in like D&D combat heavy games, you want your players to know how strong things can be, and I think you also want to know how strong your players are. So again, you could throw really easy stuff at them, but then no one has fun in combat. That's the problem. You want the session to still be fun. You don't want to be, oh my goodness, you killed that one goblin. That's it? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there's nothing else. There's nothing else in this room. Why was there just one goblin? Oh, he was on break. Everyone else left. They're on strike. He's the only one that didn't get the notice or something. It's like, wait, that's it? Like, yeah, no, this is it. Like something like that. That's a bad way to test because probably only one person got to attack that time. But if you have like 17 skeletons in that room and there's five of you and you're all like, oh, we can kill one in like 2 turns each, but you're still going to be pressed. You're still going to be hard. One of you might drop, but you have a cleric. That's fine.
I still think 17 is a little bit too much there.
Sure. Look, I'll
I'd
throw
say
some
like
traps in there for you to use or
seven
something.
or
Who knows?
eight. Yeah, well, yeah, or if there's like a choke and they can't all attack at once.
Environments, like have you guys have some fun. Like again, part of it is like, do you guys want longer combat? Do you want shorter combat? Because after, like cleaning up a battle is the most boring part of the entire fight. Because you're like, I just need the roll to hit him, please. Just let him die. He doesn't stand a
Yeah,
chance.
when it's the last one standing and you keep rolling threes.
And you're
It's
just like, we just
come
can't
on.
kill him, and he's just like, hit you 2 damage, hit you 1 damage, and it's just like, I just one hit. That's all he needs. I can kill him in one hit.
Yeah, the cleric keeps healing, and you're like, oh my god. Yeah, what? I don't know.
So like something like that, like you because as a GM, and again, we're talking about if you didn't like in the
Yeah,
context
yeah.
of you didn't have a session zero to a degree. If you had a session zero, this shouldn't be a problem. But if you didn't have one, this is there's no other time to test it. You don't want to wait till session two because they might be too powerful by then, or they might be too weak still. You never know.
Or enough would it might have
Yeah,
changed.
exactly. Like maybe they picked up an item that now they have a +1 like longsword.
Yeah. Or they picked up an
Or they have
NPC
an
and
NPC
you
helping
don't.
them out who isn't very good because I don't want my NPCs being better than my players. But you never know. Stuff like that. So I think it's very important that you still push it and if you all agree like yeah death is a reality that we should be coming to terms with like and I told you in particular in Stars Without Numbers when I play that game I'm I'm not going to hold back on the rolls because the system is meant to be deadly. It's an old school RPG. It's a Renaissance style game where you want to where death is always within reach. That's why character creation can be done in 10 minutes if you know what you're doing.
I think that's something I didn't mention when I was talking about death in session one is it does depend on game two
And not
because
only that, again, the group has to say, yes, we are fine with our characters dying. And yeah, there's wasted potential. It's dangerous,
I
but
think there's a balance here too where I think it's okay to fail in session one.
yeah.
So I think it's okay to get your butt kicked, as long as like let's say the big bad second in command shows up and like you have a fight with them and you can't
Oh, you mean like those fights in RP, like in
in
video
video
games?
games
Just like
where
you can't win
yeah
this. You
there's
can't
no
win
way
this. You can
yeah
drop them to zero, but you're still not going to win
yeah
in the
there's
cutscene.
no way you can win this. It's like the beginning of Paper Mario, you fight Bowser and he kicks your butt, but
Yeah, there are a lot of games
yeah,
like
but
that.
that's another way, especially if you don't have a session zero, to get a party saying, you know what, screw that guy, we're gonna go kick his butt.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So I don't think it's bad to fail. Or like let's say you're supposed to save a kid who was kidnapped, and the kid was killed during the combat, because maybe a player wanted to shoot an arrow and interrupt the spellcaster's burn the kid spell,
yeah,
and he didn't hit. Okay, well there's still failure is still allowed. It's specifically death that I disagree with, and I think some games don't even allow for death. So if we're talking about like masks, most of the time is you fall unconscious and then the big
yeah,
boy heroes come and save the day.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I think it's okay in a game like Masks for your characters to fail against, because that's part of the game too, is very much, did you guys succeed in this fight? Did you guys fail in this mission? Did you guys work as a team in this
Well, I think
mission? Did you
Masks is a
guys
bit different
Oh, it's
because
really it's very different.
it's
Yeah.
very different because I feel like a lot less of it is reliant on the rolls to a degree, and I know that's a stupid thing to say when it's literally did I beat the bad guy with a single roll kind of deal, but I say that because it's a lot more mental planning. Where in D&D you could be standing out in the middle of nowhere and be just like, I'm gonna fight everything, and if somehow the rolls work in your favor, you can pull it off. Where in Masks, there's a limited degree of how far you can get on your own. It's all about teamwork or lack thereof, in which case something bad's going to happen probably.
Yeah, and I think too it's the structure of the game
Yeah.
where the game relies so heavily on your character's interactions with other characters and your character's past interactions with
Yeah.
other characters, where death in Masks doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
exactly. And again, it's the Teen Titans. We didn't lose anyone until Terra was like a very important figure in the show. It's that kind of concept.
Yeah, and I don't think if let's say you guys have been playing Masks for such a long time and a player's like, oh, I just want to play a new character, I think it's okay to retire a character or even kill them off if the player and the GM agree that it would be cool to do
Yeah, no,
in
I
a
wouldn't
way.
disagree.
I think
Yeah.
that's fine. Or let's say a player is like, you know what, guys, I don't have the time to play games anymore,
Yeah, so
and
we'll
you've been
find a way
playing
to like
Masks for
murder you or
forever.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but again, that's a game that really doesn't allow for a death.
Yeah, no, and again, it's like PG-13. That's kind of how the game is to a degree, where death isn't a possibility to a degree. The rules itself doesn't really point to death as a thing. That's the thing. You have, as a GM, you have to kind of take liberty saying, yeah, now you're dead, or now they're dead.
Yeah, but to bring it back, that session one in any game you're playing, failure, okay. Death is, in my opinion, is a big no. There's like a very specific circumstance I'd allow it, and that's if you're playing a sequel campaign.
Well, so here's my question in that case then, because this is kind of my fear of saying it outright and why I had to say it for stars, is that my players might just take advantage of me if they know that. Where it's I don't allow death in the
I
first session.
understand, but session one I think should be not scripted, but like defined by the GM enough where they can't take advantage. Like,
But see, then the problem still is along the lines of I'm gonna jump in front, like it's a threatening thing you're gonna jump into. Oh, I don't care. You're not gonna kill me.
let me settle this a little bit.
Yeah.
If your players are dumb enough to say, I'm going to march up to the castle and attack the king, they deserve death.
Exactly.
No
But
matter
that's the
what
thing.
session you're in. No matter what session you're in. There needs to be, ground rules like that. But I'm just saying, like, let's say they follow what the GM wants to do and they're in the cave fighting the skeletons. No one should die there.
Yeah.
No
No,
one.
but so my example, so I think that we can pull this back to the big bad evil guy. Let's say the big bad evil guy is about to cast a spell and he's like, "Ah, nah, I don't need to." And then one of your players taunts him, saying like, "Ah, you couldn't even kill me if you wanted to." What am I supposed to do as the big bad evil guy? Just like glance at him and like, "Okay, you're dead." Snap his finger, something like that, to show his might, or do I just make him like, "You're not even worth killing," and then just disappear, something like that? Because to a degree, like depending on how I build how I want to build that big bad evil guy, it doesn't make sense in some degrees to say, yeah, no, he's not going to take that insult.
Maybe have a consequence or something. But I don't think I don't think the big bad should show up in the first session either. I agree with you there, where I think it should be hints at the big bad, but not. I don't think the big bad should announce their big evil plan in session one.
Yeah,
But there's kind of a balance, not a balance, but like if your player's like, okay, I take my sword and stab it through myself, it's like, okay, they're dead.
you're
That's
dead,
it.
guys. Pay for a res. Here's some money.
Yeah,
I
go
wanted
pay
to see
for a
how it would
res at
feel to
level
kill me.
one.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. No, if if they go and try to like assassinate a public figure who's like really famous and popular and no one is good on that, they're going to die. There's no way you can avoid that.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is the encounter in session 1 should not be hard enough to it should be you have to balance it really well. It should be challenging enough to see if the players can handle certain things or not, but it should also not kill them if they fall down below 0 HP.
Yeah.
They either the skeletons once the player falls down are dumb enough are too dumb to realize that they're not dead and don't stab again and give them a chance to recover, or you're knocked out, your character stays knocked out, we're not going to roll for recovery, or we're not going to bleed out or
Yeah.
anything like that.
And again, I think a lot of it again comes down to how does your group feel about this? Like maybe your group welcomes death to a degree.
There's a difference between having a character literally go on a suicide mission versus
Yeah, no, for
versus
sure.
a character who accidentally fumbles and a skeleton that accidentally crits.
And what I really hate is characters like that unless they can somehow really back up their actions. Somehow, one way or another. Unless you have a good reason for why you're doing this, I'm not a fan.
They basically session 0 should settle what session 1 is going to be shaped like.
And again, that's kind of why Session Zero is so important in my eyes.
Oh,
But yeah, some people don't do it, and it's not that they don't want to. It's because sometimes they don't know, and then sometimes they don't want to. But I'm not going to judge you too hardly for that. I just find that having a Session Zero is helpful.
yeah. And
So
go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say that with how Session One and Session Zero are very closely linked, I do think that it's kind of unavoidable to kind of have a session 0 to a degree. At the very least, talk about what you're going to do. But still, I don't think that a lot of GMs do a session 0. That's the thing.
No, I don't. At least I don't even know how popular a term. I don't know. I think you've coined the term session
Nah,
zero.
I don't think so. I probably stole it from Reddit, knowing me.
That's true, maybe, but I feel like you're the only GM I've played with who really was like, all right, let's sit down and talk about what we want out of this campaign and what we're thinking about
It's
doing.
because I've had so many games before where people have basically burned me because they're like, no, I wanted something different. And then another person says, I thought we were doing this. And then another person says, I thought we were playing a game about flower picking. And then I'm suddenly like, oh my God, how did I
Yeah,
get
but
here?
I also think it's super helpful to do session one immediately following session zero.
Well, I can see to a degree. Sometimes I prefer to stick it out a bit longer, though, just because it gives. Sometimes there are more questions than answers in session 0, and I want my players to think. But again, that depends.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I think maybe take a break between the two, but like not. I feel like it's super helpful because you for session zero you need everyone sat around a table anyway.
again, like I said, session 1 is canon, session 0 isn't necessarily canon. The game hasn't really started until you get to session 1.
And that's I think another part of session one too, at least if you're playing with new players, is to get them accustomed to the system.
That's rule explanation,
So
sometimes like
you
that.
know, I think it's super important to allow if you have new players specifically, to allow them to correct mistakes.
Yeah,
So let's say you're in combat in Pathfinder and they don't really understand that they don't understand how the turn system works. So they don't understand it's one movement and a standard action or a movement and a movement or
or you can use different action economy systems. So I definitely agree with that. But I know that a lot of GMs do this where like they print out stuff and whatnot, and like, oh, here's a little sheet with all your info. Part of me likes it because it helps the players immensely, but at the same time, I feel like I'm babying them a bit. Because in my mind, the fastest way to teach someone is to have them do it.
I
I'm a very
understand.
strong believer in that.
But for a new player, you don't want the sheet to spell out. I think there's the again balance, always balance. But
Yeah.
I think making a sheet that goes here's your turn order. You start with you have a free action, which you could do whatever that you do this fast. You have a
Yeah.
an instant. You have a this that. I think that when you write out their options and options that apply to every character, by the way, when you write out those options, that's super helpful to have as a new player. But you don't want to say, new player is playing a bard. Well, first you should, you know, take out your instrument. Then you should prepare a song. You don't want to
Literally tell them everything on what to do.
you don't want to tell them everything about their character because one, that's too much work on the GM, and two, you want them to kind of get their own play style going and get used to their class.
Yeah, I might know the
Yeah,
optimal,
well,
but
that's
maybe
not
they
to
don't
say
like it.
that maybe if they have a question about how the game works, they can ask you. That's fine.
Yeah. No, so I you know me, I'm not a strong believer in using those sheets, and the primary reason why is that I usually have another experienced player who can help them. And worst case, I'm right here. You have a question, just ask me. I'm here to help you. I don't believe in the GM versus player bullshit. The GM is there to be the storyteller. I set the scene for you guys. What you guys do with that information is up to you.
But again,
I'm there for everyone to have a good time. That's it.
there's that level. I think especially in a group of mixed experience, where a new player might feel intimidated or embarrassed to ask questions. So having a sheet that you give to everybody,
Yeah.
regardless, and just to establish basic rules, I think is super helpful.
So yeah, I've done this once. Don't you remember? I did this with masks because no one could remember any of the moves except me, and I'm just like, okay, this is just too. This is too much. I can't do this without giving you guys these sheets.
And that I still have my sheet here. It's super helpful. But we were all new players too. But that's besides the point. Having a sheet with basically here's what every character can do a turn in combat.
Yeah,
Specifically
but the
like in the
difference I
situation.
think is for masks is that everyone has those moves. Like the even leveling like advancements and whatnot in masks doesn't change that generally. And when it does, it's like, oh, I know for sure because I have a little checkbox next to my thing that tells me. It's not like Pathfinder where there's a billion things that you have to get a wiki
Hmm.
for.
Well, what's different in Masks too is everything is written on your character sheet already. So it's like this is what the move does exactly how it does it, and I
Exactly.
think that that's a genius way to handle it for Masks. It's much more efficient for the player, regardless of their experience with the game. I'm talking specifically about combat in Pathfinder or D&D,
Yeah, no, and I
where
understand. It's
it can be.
very, very confusing.
I've had so many games where a new player. I always have new players in my games, and I enjoy having them. But a new player doesn't know exactly what are my options,
Yeah.
and having that sheet to tell them their options can be a huge blessing for
So
everybody.
normally, what I like to do, especially with new players, is that one, I make it very clear, don't feel embarrassed if you have a question. I'm here to help you. This is, I want you to have a good time.
But again, stage
That's
fright like that,
yeah. I'm
that's
not
you
afraid.
can't
Like
really
again,
fight that.
it
You
happens,
can't
but I
really
think
get.
another thing is that okay, before this starts, I'm gonna give. So I don't. Again, singling someone out isn't always fun, but sometimes you have to do it. So for me, I'm like, okay, so what this means is combat's about to begin. So I want you all to roll d20. Even if the experienced players know what they're doing, I'm expecting them to at least have the courtesy to understand why I'm doing
No,
this.
no, and that's fine. Like I guess
Yeah.
having okay, it's kind of like that tutorial type
Yeah,
thing
I'm
where
giving it
have
a
you ever
tutorial to everyone.
like it's like how game in video games at least every sequel to a game still has a tutorial,
Yeah.
and it's just in case there are
Players
you
who
know
just pick
new
this one over
players
the
like
next instead of the
yeah
first one.
like
Exactly.
you might start with the second game because that's what's out.
But sometimes, controls change. That's why. So they're like, "Oh, we
Exactly.
added something new. So here's a little tutorial so you learn."
And so I think it's okay to walk that through, but again, there's still situations where it's just so much more helpful in the first session to really get a grasp for it.
I think this is a very prime problem with D&D in particular because I think the main problem is spellcasting. If spellcasting wasn't a thing, this wouldn't be as much of a problem.
So complicated.
Because in spellcasting, and I say this having as being a spellcaster player and also having to run for monsters, D20 PFSRD is the greatest thing they've ever made. I'm not gonna lie. That source of information there is so great because you're like, oh no, now you go to this link and then you go to this link, and then I'm like, I know this is a pain that I have to go through so many links, but thank goodness this is here because otherwise I wouldn't be able to do this.
I think it's us still that we played forever and we still didn't really know how grapple checks work.
No, I don't know how grapple checks work. I don't know how poison works. I have flowcharts for these because I don't know how it works.
Yeah, and we've
And
been
I've played the
playing.
game for
Yeah,
like 3 years. I've
yeah.
GM'd for at least two.
I've
I don't
played
know
for
how it
like
works.
10 or 11. I don't have no idea how half of this stuff works.
Exactly, and
But
and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like as long as you have the information, and it's fine. And I think another important thing, especially for newer, and this happens a lot in session one. Um, if you don't, so an example would be, oh, I rolled, I hit the AC of the target. Okay, do we want to say it hits? It still hits, or do we want to say it doesn't hit? Me personally, I like combat to be a bit bloodier, so I always say, oh yeah, no, no, hitting the AC number is fine. You managed to do it. Some people don't like that. They say, no, 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 you have to go over. It doesn't count unless you go over it. And that works both ways because it saves you.
that's an agreement you make in session
Yeah,
zero. But
exactly. But I think the idea of this is that if there are things that you guys don't aren't sure of, and especially as the GM, don't be afraid to say, okay, guys, I'm not entirely sure how this works. So we can do two things. We can either look in the book and figure it out, or we can do what sounds right for the most of us and agree, yeah, that sounds about right. If there is like some inconsistency problems, then just say, guys, let's just go with how we think it is for now for this session. If there's anything wrong, it's fine. Still canon. We're not going to change anything. But I'm going to reread the rules to see if this is how it actually works. A rare occasion for this is when I want to take immediate action, saying, okay, that is the definition of your character. I don't want you being completely broken at this point and then you can never do this again, because that doesn't make any sense. So I want you guys to. So I'm going to read the rules now, that way I'm sure. Or, I don't know how stunned works. Kind of important depending, because maybe they can hit you, maybe they can't hit you, and you might die. Stuff like that is important. But if it's in the situation like, oh, he's prone. Do I get it like a +4 to hit, or is it like he gets a +4 or something because maybe that helps us more? I don't know. Someone gets a plus. Just roll with the +4. We'll just say he loses 4 AC. We'll go with that. Something like that. And it's very and In scenarios like that, it's better to keep the flow going rather than try to lose it, look up a roll, and then suddenly it's like, okay, now where? Oh yeah, you hit him. Great, let's keep going. It's a very dangerous trap to fall into, especially if you're a new GM, because you want to be sure. You want to say, no, no, I know how this game works. Let me check. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know how this works. We're going to find out after the encounter, or I'm going to find out next session so we never run into this problem again. Failure is the easiest way to remember stuff. You don't remember all the successes you make, you remember the failures, because those will always stick out to you.
Sure. I don't know exactly how to follow it up.
Thank you for the
Yeah, yeah,
response
no,
there.
no.
Thank you.
I was just trying to think how to follow this up. Um, but bring it again.
Yeah, back to session one.
Bring it back to the point. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Um, I still think it's super helpful for session one to be a playground where players can figure out, not a playground in the sense that it's free and open, but
It's sort of like a
a
sandbox, I would say. You can see how far you can go.
more like an obstacle
An
course.
obstacle
I think
course.
I think I feel like
Oh, I don't want to
session
run.
one. No, but I feel like session one should be a little more streamlined than the other sessions, just so people can see what their limits are character wise.
Yeah.
So, I like obstacle courses. It's like, oh, there's a big rock wall. You have to climb over it. Can your character make it? Can your character not? Now we know that your character can make it 3/4 of the way up, which means, as a GM, I'm going to, not scale things exactly that, but make it a bit easier than where I had it. Or lower the wall a little bit. Or, oh, now you have to, jump through tires or something. Can your character make it through that? Can the player adapt to this sort of
Yeah, so I
situation?
think I think that's something we haven't really talked about either. I think this is also a very good opportunity to see how creative your players can be, because there's always these stories of, yeah, my players crashed like an airship into a dragon. It was the most like the most badass fight we've ever had in our lives, and everyone's like clapping. Then you got stories like Sir Barrington, where he's like, I was a bear, I'm still a bear, everyone thinks I'm a noble, and the one time the guy says I'm not a bear, I'm a bear, everyone kills him because of that. Like, the thing is here is that you want to see how far your players can get and how creative they can be to solve problems as well, because I know there are some players that are very direct and like, no, we're just gonna bash our head against that wall and break it down, and it's just like, okay, yeah, go for it. Now you know how to solve all problems, and when you want to throw something that's challenging to your players, whether it's not combat, it's not like talking to someone because I don't know, for whatever reason everyone loves them for one way or another. Maybe you have like the folk hero background in 5e, and everyone has to love you because of it, but you can throw like session one is good for seeing what they're good at, and then you can also think what are they going to be bad at. An example I love in Pathfinder is that for you, a lot of enemies are very easy because when you played Dordry, he was a gunslinger. Gunslinger hits touch, and for those who don't know what how Pathfinder or 3.5 work is, there's AC, which is an armor check, and then there's touch. Touch is literally just touching a person. That's much easier to do than piercing the armor that they're wearing.
Yeah, and for some reason, shooting a gun at someone counts as
Whereas
touch.
an arrow doesn't. But it's fine. I'm assuming because bullets can go through
Pierce.
any
I think
armor
that's what it is.
apparently.
Yeah.
But regardless
Yeah.
of how the actual science behind it works, the concept was, well, now it's really hard for me to throw a big bad monster because their touch is always low because they're a big bad monster. A
Yeah.
dragon
My
flying
character
in
would
the
be able to
sky
hit them no matter
is a
what.
big bird to a gunslinger essentially. And it's just like, I've shot tons of birds. This is easy. So what's the hard thing to do? The hard thing to do is to throw an enemy that's very like dexterous, very hard to hit. Something that's not easy for the enemies, not easy for the gunslinger to touch essentially.
Yeah, but you wouldn't know that if, let's say,
Yeah, you wouldn't know that immediately, but it's
to have that
important to
session one to figure that out. Yeah.
figure this out. The session one is to figure out what they're good at and what they're bad at.
I would almost say a bit of session two bleeds into that too.
Uh,
Well, I think you're learning things
yeah.
about, and again, I think every session where your players have leveled up, you don't need to ease it off, or you don't need to do exactly like the session one type streamlined experience. But as a GM, you want to know what your players are able to do, and as a player, you want to be able to know what your character is able to do.
Yeah, so a very strong example of this would be even in masks. So let's say one of our players played the transformed, and then he picked up the ability to transform himself into anything he wanted to because
Shapeshift,
yeah, he basically was
basically.
able to shapeshift, sort of like Mystique, if you guys know how that works. So he could change into any form, any person, essentially.
That's around his
Yeah,
height.
around his height, or
Or
he
yeah.
can change his height too. But we weren't. He never did. But the important thing is essentially that he was able to now go back into society because he used to live in the woods because of his appearance. Now he could go back into society. So when big fights started appearing, people were like, I don't know who this guy is. Whereas everyone else was like, oh, there's that hero. We know their weakness. And then who's this guy? And then suddenly they're just like, I'm the transformed and big punch and they're knocked out. Or yeah, now I have super speed, so now I could get over there really quickly. I was like, oh, I forgot that one of you have super speed. Now, oh man, I didn't expect this. Okay, you get there in 2 minutes. Yeah, no, the bomb is still there. Yeah, you can get rid of it now. You can try to defuse it and stuff. Like,
I'm not going to defuse it. I'm going to pick it up and run it into the middle of the ocean and run away. Well, that works too.
run back, and again, like stuff like that. And I'm just like, man, I really didn't remember that he picked up that ability. And sometimes that's a pleasant surprise as a GM. Like, oh yeah, you remembered what your abilities are. That's cool. On the other hand, I really hated that these things happened because I'm like, ah, man, now I don't have anything for half the session. Okay,
Now my whole plot is yeah, my whole plot is gone.
and that's why having the ability to improv is nice. In case you guys haven't noticed by now, I'm a very improv heavy GM, and I highly recommend everyone be able to improv one way or another.
Oh, I mean, players are going to mold their way out of any situation if they want to.
Yeah, exactly. But as a GM, be ready to improv heavily. And I think session one is the test for that. Seeing how your players react and more importantly how you react to what they do. So, yeah, I think that's power like the power curve when you're leveling up is scary, but again, that's for future sessions, not so much
Yeah.
starting session.
I yeah, and I think that it works differently. Like you should always be testing your players. Like you should always be
Testing and eventually challenging. I think
yeah,
that's
testing and challenging I think go hand in hand, but um and players should always be experimenting too and finding out what their new abilities can do, what their old abilities, how their old abilities can work with their new abilities. I think session one is really just to get a grasp on your character and their basic abilities.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think understanding how it works and I definitely think session one is a lot more work for the GM because
I
again,
don't.
you're starting out. I would say it does because you have to set this whole thing in motion and you have to be sure that everyone has an enjoyable experience. Players, you just get to play whatever you want. You can react to however you want because we don't have anything in stone yet. Where everyone can say, hey, your character never acted like that before. Is something changing? Did something happen? There's no real blueprint there for that. I mean, yes, character creation, session zero, but
But again, you are learning as a player. You are learning about your character in a more metagame type way where it's like
yeah.
my character can do this. I didn't realize that, or oh my
I didn't
character's
realize I can
ability
get like a
to
+5 on all these
yeah,
attacks at level
or
2 or some
my
nonsense.
character's ability to talk to animals really makes this easy.
Yeah,
Because this cat saw a murder, or et cetera, et cetera. It goes on, it goes on. But
exactly.
I do agree with you that maybe the GM. I think the GM's job is harder in every
In almost
session.
every session because you're like, I
I think
gotta
the
do
GM's job.
voices,
I
I
think
gotta
the
do all
GM's
that
job is
stuff. Yeah.
difficult. Well, again, the GM is playing everything else. You're not
You
just
guys
playing
play
one
one character, I
character.
play the world. Have fun.
That's a decent debate to have at another day.
Yeah.
Because I'm is it more intricate to create a single being than it is to create a whole world? Which
Some
I
people
think
find it
that's something
easier.
to
Some
talk
people find
about.
it easier. That's the thing. But yeah.
Well, that's something to talk about
Yeah,
later,
we'll talk about
definitely.
that
I think that'd
later.
be
We're
great.
been going on for a while now, I will say. So
Yeah,
I
I
don't think
think
we have
we're
time for a completely new topic there, but
no, yeah, I think wrapping it up soon
yeah.
would be
So
good. So, just quick summary or
summary. Oh man, I think we went like both ways, and then we went back, and then we just kind of did like a somersault somewhere in the middle. But yeah.
it
So
was fun.
yeah, it was an interesting conversation. So I think to sum it up from my point of view, one, GM, good luck as always. Second, I think we can agree that like the real obstacles shouldn't be popping up, like death. You shouldn't be trying to throw in like your big bad shouldn't be the one fighting most of the time. You should be trying to throw in cronies, smaller guys, And part of that is because you want your players to feel kind of successful, and that doesn't mean you have to make them succeed, but again, try to put the core. I think stack things in their favor. I think generally for how it works, because you want no one wants to play a game and say, "Oh, I failed. I want to keep playing this game because I failed." No, they generally want to play because they succeeded and they want to see where the story goes. But you have to leave the hook there as the GM to make them want to keep playing for whatever reason. Always plan for the next session as well. Don't just leave it at that session. How about for you? What do you think?
Session one, I again maybe I'll take this more from a player standpoint because you got the GM standpoint pretty well done. As a player, you should know that bits and pieces of plot are going to be happening, so pay attention. Any character you run into could be important or could be not. I think it's important to remember that at the end of the day, this is something you do in a group. This is not Fallout or Skyrim or in our video game where you do things on your own. Remember to take other people's wants and needs, at least not other characters but other players' wants and needs for the game into account when you make your decisions as a player or a character. um, Experiment. Don't be afraid to be creative. Don't be afraid to try out all your abilities. If you have a high charisma roll in Pathfinder, try to smooth talk somebody. If just see what your limits are, um, and try to work together. Don't be too afraid because the GM hopefully won't want to kill you. But don't go too out there because the GM might have to kill you. Uh, have fun, take it easy, enjoy yourself, and remember that this is nothing that you do, nothing that your character does has to be informed by any other prior experience because this is the first time they should be acting. So really, just go with what you think your character would do. Go with your gut, um, and enjoy. Just make sure you keep the game fun for everybody too.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate that point that you said at the end. Like I've said before, last episode, maybe the episode, even the first episode, I'm not entirely sure. But whatever you do, this is the time for it to be set in stone. Character creation, all that stuff, those are just words on a paper and words that you talk with each other. What
Hopefully
happens?
written in pencil
Yes, in pencil, not pen. But
or in a document on your
yeah,
computer.
just make sure you can erase. But the
Yeah,
important thing is that this is the moment when your your characters, I mean, come to life. Players, hopefully you come to life too, but primarily we want the characters coming alive. So yeah, I think that wraps it up. What do you think, Arthur?
all right, awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good. Um, so again, we'll do our little like spiel here. If you have any questions or comments or stuff you want us to talk about.
Yeah, I know this could be a bit of a. Some of the
Oh
things we
yeah, and
talked
if you
about
want to
might be up
debate
for
it,
debate
like
here and there.
bring it.
So
You can email us at
yeah,
swords.shields.etc@gmail.com.
you need to be sure that you
It's
get that every
etc.
time.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
swords.shields.etc@gmail.com. When I start uploading this episode and hopefully with the other episodes, there'll be a link to Discord probably in the description. Um,
Yeah.
if there isn't, it's because we haven't set it up yet. I think I did set one up, didn't I?
We have one.
Yeah,
Yes, we
we
do
do have
have
one
one.
now.
Um,
And there, we'll have different rooms, with different text chats for you to ask what you want, or
yeah.
maybe one will be suggestions, one will be questions, one will be debates, and etc. And we'll try our best to look at your stuff and answer you, or bring it onto the podcast maybe.
Yeah.
I'm looking into Patreon and I'm looking into other ways we can interact with you guys. We'll probably have a Facebook page going. Um,
Yeah. For now, I
I
think the
know
goal is to be a bit try to expand.
yeah.
We don't want to
I know I'm
go
making
too
I'm
crazy.
making a Twitter for us as well, so we'll have that going.
Yeah.
And that all that information I'll throw down in description boxes on all the media we're placing this on, which I think is going to be like iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, maybe even Spotify if we figure that
Yeah.
out.
However you found us, thank you for at least listening up to this point. If you somehow have, These first three episodes were kind of a trial run for us. We wanted to see how well we could do
We've never done this before,
without, yeah.
as you
In
can
case
tell.
you haven't noticed, hopefully we've gone better in these three episodes. I'm sorry if the first episode makes you want to cringe for whatever reason, because that, in
I
my
was
opinion, is our
cringing
worst. But
editing that, but yeah.
yeah. So, but for these three episodes were our trial run, so to speak. So again, give us any like suggestions or ways to improve. If you hate the sound of our voice, we'll find a way to deal with that, I guess.
We can augment it
Yeah,
somehow.
we'll deal with something. We'll make our pitches a bit higher, a bit lower, whatever, however it works.
Yeah.
I'm not doing a voice for the entire thing. If that's what you want me to do, I won't do that. But I thank you for listening up to this point, and know that hopefully we'll just keep improving from here. This is all very new to us, one way or another. So we hope to make your listening experience better for the future, and hopefully you will continue to listen and see us grow.
Hopefully, I think things are going to get a lot more conversational and a lot less preachy starting episode 4.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we're kind of preaching now. Don't worry, we're very bad at preaching for the most part. So
Which is why
hopefully,
these 3 episodes are terrible. No,
yeah,
I'm happy with what we've done
yeah,
so
no.
far.
So please be brutally honest with us. However it is,
Brutally,
we
yeah.
just wanna improve. Please don't make it so bad that I can't read it personally. But it's fine. Just try to give us some criticism that we can work off of. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, like this is
Yeah.
something that we've been talking about doing for a while, and
Yeah, and it took a while
hopefully,
for us to do here. Hopefully that you guys can see that with our conversations. But
yeah,
yeah,
and
we've been
hopefully
hoping
you
to do this for
enjoy.
a
That's
while.
what that's
Yeah,
most importantly. Like partially we're doing this for us, but really,
we want to share our thoughts with everyone else and see how they react because we like to think that the way we view things is obviously different since we have these debates and whatnot. But we want to see like how many people would agree with us on these debates, or maybe there's a third side that we're not even seeing.
yeah, who knows?
Yeah,
And talking about that would be great. So yeah, I
yeah.
think we're gonna be more conversational from here on
Yeah,
out for
so
sure.
and again, if you have any suggestions on what you want us to talk about in the future, maybe, or maybe like go back and talk about it again, say, oh, you guys never even talked about this when you were talking about that, or maybe you didn't even think about it. Yeah, we'll go back and talk about it if we have the time. I know I'd love to, so.
Yeah. Well, I think
Right.
that's us signing off then.
Yeah,
So again, Arthur signing out, I guess is a good way to
yeah.
put it, right?
I'm still gonna be here, unfortunately for me, but yeah. Bye,
Yeah.
Arthur.
Yeah, I'll see you. All right. And that's it. Bye.
I'm so bad at clapping, Arthur. I do the weird. I gotta do like the proper way, the English way of clapping. Maybe I should do that. Yeah.